All right, so get this. Picture the universe, right? Like a giant clock ticking away, every single thing, every star, every planet, even tiny little atoms all moving together perfectly in sync. That's the kind of wild concept we're diving into today.
Wild is right.
You sent in some fascinating stuff about this guy, René Descartes,
Oh, yeah, Descartes.
and this radical idea he had that the whole universe, it's basically a
The
machine.
machine, uh-huh.
So we're gonna take a deep dive today into how this 17th century thinker, how he shaped the way we see the world, even centuries later. I mean, can you believe that?
It's pretty amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just, philosophy we're talking about here.
Oh, right, of course.
Descartes, he was a major player in the whole scientific revolution thing.
Okay, yeah.
Like back then, people were finally starting to move away from explaining everything as like divine intervention.
Oh, so instead of God made it happen, it was more like, let's figure out what natural laws are behind it?
Exactly. Descartes was all about applying that kind of thinking
Mm-hmm.
to everything, astronomy, biology, even how our own bodies work.
Wow.
Pretty big leap. Yeah.
Yeah, huge. And that's what makes it so fascinating. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty here. This universe is a machine idea. What exactly was Descartes getting at?
Well, he believed that the universe operates like a perfectly designed machine, with every single event determined by physical laws. So instead of saying like, oh, that apple falls because God willed it, Descartes, he focused on describing its motion mathematically.
Hmm.
It's like paving the way for modern physics.
So he was basically like, forget the mystery, let's get to the math. No more relying on the supernatural, just cold, hard calculation.
You got it.
Yeah.
He wasn't necessarily saying there were no more mysteries, though.
Oh,
It
okay.
was more about seeking explanations through observation and math. He was a big believer in finding mechanical explanations for everything, like a clockmaker who takes apart every gear every spring to see how it all fits together.
I like that analogy. So that's where his ideas about matter and motion come in, right? It's like those are the raw materials he's using to build this universe machine.
Right on. For Descartes, matter and motion, those were like the fundamental components of reality. Everything in the physical world was made up of matter, and any change you saw, well, that was just matter moving and interacting, that's all.
Okay, so walk me through this. How did he actually break down motion? What were the pieces of his cosmic puzzle?
Okay, so he proposed three fundamental elements of motion. First, you've got inertia, the idea that an object in motion, it'll stay in motion unless something acts on it. Imagine like a billiard ball rolling on a table forever, unless it hits another ball or the side.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So what's next? Next, you have a collision, which is how those billiard balls transfer motion when they hit each other. It's all about the laws that govern how objects interact and exchange energy.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
But I gotta ask about this third element, these vortices I keep hearing about. It sounds kind of like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? It's definitely the most out there part.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. To explain how the planets move in those perfect orbits, he imagined these swirling patterns of motion, these giant whirlpools in space, carrying the planets along. Like, it was his way of saying, hey, even the heavens operate on mechanical principles.
Wow, so even though that turned out to be wrong, it shows just how committed he was to finding those mechanical explanations for everything.
Exactly. And even though Newton came along later with his theory of gravity, you can see how Descartes, how his focus on mechanical explanations, it set the stage for, more accurate theories down the line.
Yeah, it's like he was saying, there's got to be a logical, physical explanation for everything, even if we haven't figured it out yet. Okay, so he's applying this to the stars and planets, but did he try to explain everything as a machine? Even living things?
Oh, he sure did. In fact, Descartes believed that plants, animals, even humans, could be understood through that same mechanical lens. He even went so far as to describe animals as, get this, automata, basically saying they operated like complex machines without any true feelings or consciousness.
Hold on, so you're saying my dog is just a robot? I have to disagree with Descartes there.
Well, yeah, that particular view hasn't aged very well,
Mm.
and it caused a lot of debate even back then. But remember, he was working with, the limitations of his time.
Sure.
He was trying to build a unified framework to explain the natural world. And while his ideas about animals, they might seem a little harsh now, they were radical for his era. But it does make you think about that line between living beings and complex machines, doesn't it?
Eh.
Where does consciousness fit in? What makes us different?
Definitely something to ponder. And it gets even more interesting when you consider that he applied the same thinking to physics, too.
Absolutely. His work on the laws of motion, though later refined by Newton, it really laid the foundation for understanding how forces interact. And his rejection of action at a distance, that was revolutionary.
Wait, back up a sec. Action at a distance. What does that even mean?
Okay, so back then, some people thought objects could, influence each other without even touching. Like some invisible force reaching out. Imagine trying to move a chess piece across the board just by, thinking about it without actually touching it.
Okay, yeah.
That's action at a distance.
Gotcha. So Descartes wasn't having any of that magical thinking.
Nope, not at all. He was all about those direct physical interactions, just like gears in a machine. Everything had to connect, to touch, to push or pull. That kind of thinking really pushed people to investigate how forces actually worked.
So while his universe as a machine idea was groundbreaking, I'm guessing it wasn't without its critics. I mean, it seems like reducing everything to mechanics would, well, kind of miss the big picture, right?
Right. While Descartes' vision was powerful for explaining the physical world, it did have its weaknesses. Critics argued that reducing everything to mechanics oversimplifies things.
Yeah.
Like it misses the complexity and those unique properties that emerge in living things.
Yeah, you can't really explain something as complex as human emotions or creativity with just gears and livers. Where does free will fit in? What about the human spirit?
Those were exactly the kinds of questions that challenged Descartes' framework. Trying to fit things like consciousness, free will, the human spirit into this mechanical model, that proved to be pretty tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And yet, even with those limitations, it seems like his ideas had a huge impact both in his time and even today.
I bet. So to really grasp how far-reaching his influence has been, we need to dive into how his legacy played out in the centuries that followed.
Exactly.
Buckle up, everybody. We're about to fast forward a few hundred years and see how Descartes' ideas shaped the world we live in today.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so we've time traveled, we've explored this wild idea of a clockwork universe, and we've even questioned whether our furry friends are actually robots in disguise.
Right.
Now, I'm ready to see, how did Descartes' thinking echo, through the centuries? How did his ideas shape, the world we live in today, especially when it comes to science and technology?
Well, think about it this way. One of the biggest things Descartes gave us was that foundation for the scientific method, that systematic approach, the one we all learn about, observing, experimenting, testing hypotheses. It all goes back to his emphasis on finding natural explanations, those mechanical explanations for things. He really pushed people to look beyond those supernatural interpretations and seek evidence-based answers.
So even though some of his specific ideas, they were later disproven, like the vortex thing, his approach to science itself, that was revolutionary.
Absolutely. It's like he provided that roadmap for scientific inquiry. And scientists, they've been following it ever since.
Yeah.
His influence, you can see it so clearly in fields like physics and chemistry, like the idea that everything is made up of these tiny particles interacting according to these physical laws. That's pure Descartes.
It's amazing to think that we've gone from, imagining these indivisible atoms to actually exploring the subatomic realm, like quarks and leptons and all that. And yet that basic principle, matter in motion, it still holds true. It's like he planted the seed and it's just continued to grow, branch out into all these different areas of science.
And it's not just about that microscopic world. That idea of the universe as this machine with its predictable laws and mechanisms, it also paved the way for the rise of technology and engineering. Think about all those complex machines we've built, airplanes, smartphones, robots.
Oh, yeah.
They all rely on those same principles of mechanics that Descartes, he was so fascinated by.
It's like every time I use my phone, I'm holding a tiny piece of Descartes' vision in my hand. Like we're basically living in a world that he helped to imagine, at least in some ways. But even with all this, all this amazing progress, I keep coming back to this tension between the mechanical and the human. How do things like consciousness and free will, how do those fit into this picture?
Yeah, you've hit on one of the biggest challenges to Descartes' thinking. He was brilliant at explaining the physical world, but when it came to subjective human experience, things got a lot more complicated. I mean, where do you even draw the line between a complex machine and a conscious being?
Right. I mean, if we're just machines following pre-programmed instructions, does that mean we don't really have free will? That all our choices, they're already determined? It makes you wonder if there's something more to us than just gears and levers,
Descartes himself wrestled with these questions. He believed that humans had a soul that was separate from the physical body, like a realm of thought and consciousness that couldn't be reduced to mere mechanics. But even he struggled to reconcile that dualistic view with his broader framework, that clockwork universe.
So he left us with a bit of a philosophical puzzle. It's like he gave us these amazing tools to understand the physical world, but then he also threw in these huge existential questions, the kind that still haven't been fully answered.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes his legacy so fascinating. He didn't shy away from those tough questions, even if he didn't always have satisfying answers.
Mm.
And that's something we can learn from him, to embrace the unknown, to keep asking those big questions, even if they lead us into uncomfortable territory.
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the mechanics of things, but it's those deeper questions about consciousness, about free will, that really make us human. So, knowing all this, I can't help but wonder if Descartes were alive today, seeing our world of computers, artificial intelligence, what would he make of it all?
Oh, wouldn't that be an incredible conversation to have? Would he see AI as like the ultimate expression of his mechanistic vision, a world where machines can learn and even create? Or would he be pushing us to look beyond the algorithms, to explore the mysteries of consciousness, those things that still elude even the most advanced technology?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it seems like his ideas laid the groundwork for a lot of the technological advancements we see today, right? I mean, we're basically surrounded by machines that process information, they make calculations, they even learn, just like he imagined.
Yeah. But on the other hand, he was also deeply concerned with the human soul, with those aspects of our experience that go beyond the purely physical. Would he see modern technology as a threat to those qualities, or as a potential way to enhance them?
It's a question with no easy answers, but it's definitely something worth thinking about, especially as we continue to navigate this rapidly evolving technological landscape. And it speaks to the lasting impact of Descartes' work. His ideas, they continue to spark these important conversations about the relationship between humanity and technology, even centuries later.
And speaking of lasting impact, there's another key aspect of Descartes' legacy that we need to explore. His influence on the way we approach knowledge and learning itself.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about how Descartes, how he shaped our understanding of knowledge.
Well, one of the most important things he emphasized was the power of questioning assumptions and relying on reason and logic to arrive at truth. He challenged people to think for themselves, to examine their beliefs critically, to not just accept things blindly.
So he was all about empowering individuals to become critical thinkers, not just, passive recipients of information.
Exactly. He believed that knowledge, it shouldn't be based on authority or tradition, but on careful observation, logical deduction, and a willingness to challenge prevailing ideas.
That's a pretty powerful message, and one that feels incredibly relevant today, especially in a world where we're just bombarded with information from all sides.
Absolutely. In this age of information overload, it's more important than ever to develop those critical thinking skills, to be able to discern fact from fiction and to form our own informed opinions.
So in a way, we're all inheriting this intellectual legacy from Descartes. We're all part of this ongoing quest for knowledge, this pursuit of truth that he helped set in motion.
And as we continue on that journey, it's important to remember that Descartes, he wasn't just interested in accumulating facts. He was also deeply concerned with the ethical implications of knowledge and the role of human reason in shaping a better world.
That's a great point. It's not enough to simply understand how the world works. We also have this responsibility to use that knowledge wisely and ethically to consider the potential consequences of our actions and to strive to create a more just and equitable society.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of Descartes' legacy that we need to unpack: his influence on our understanding of the human condition
Yeah.
and our place in the universe.
Okay, I'm ready for this. Let's dive into the deep end and explore how he shaped our views on what it means to be human. Okay, so we've been on this incredible journey through Descartes' clockwork universe. We've debated, do dogs have souls? And we've even pondered the ethics of AI.
Yeah,
So I think it's time to tackle that big question.
the big one.
What does it all mean? What's the lasting impact of this guy? I mean, he lived centuries ago, right?
It's pretty amazing how relevant his ideas still are.
Very
Right?
actually.
One of his biggest contributions, I think, was this idea that we shouldn't just blindly accept what we're told. We should question, we should reason, we should seek evidence. Like, he gave us the keys to critical thinking.
That's huge, especially today, like you said, when we're bombarded with information from every direction. It's like you
Yeah.
really need that filter to figure out like what's real and what's not.
Exactly. Descartes, he was all about using logic and reason to sift through all that noise, to arrive at, at truth. And that's a skill. It's more important now than ever in this modern world. Think about all the choices you make every day, from what news you believe, to what products you buy, to, I don't know, everything, really. It all comes down to being able to think for yourself, to weigh evidence, to make informed decisions.
So it's not just about science and technology. It's like being an informed citizen, a savvy consumer, just
Yeah.
a more thoughtful person in general.
You got it. And Descartes, he would argue that this ability to reason, to question, even to doubt, that's what really sets us apart as humans.
Okay, but wait, didn't he also say that we're just machines? How does that fit with this whole idea of us being, these rational thinking beings?
Well, that is the paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Descartes saw the universe as this intricate machine, and he even applied that thinking to the human body.
Uh-huh.
But he also believed that we had this non-physical soul, like a realm of thought and consciousness that couldn't be, explained by mere mechanics.
So even though he was this champion of reason, of logic, he still acknowledged that there were mysteries that went beyond the reach of science.
He did. And I think that's a really important lesson for us today.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as we've learned about the world, there's still so much we don't understand, especially when it comes to, the human mind, the nature of consciousness.
It's like he's saying, hey, go ahead, use your brain, figure out the laws of nature, build amazing machines, but don't forget that there's still this spark of mystery within you, something that goes beyond just gears and levers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that sense of wonder, that curiosity, that's what drives us. To keep exploring, to keep asking those big questions about who we are and where we fit into, the grand scheme of things.
It's almost like a call to action. Don't just be a cog in the machine. Use your unique gifts to understand the world, to improve it, and maybe even create something beautiful.
I think that's a fantastic way to sum up Descartes' legacy. He challenged us to think critically, to push the boundaries of knowledge, and to never lose sight of our own humanity in the process.
All right, folks, there you have it. We've journeyed through the mind of René Descartes. We explored this vision he had of a clockwork universe, and we even wrestled with some pretty profound questions about science, about consciousness, and what it even means to be human.
We've seen how his ideas sparked a revolution in scientific thinking. They've paved the way for, incredible technological advancements, and honestly, they continue to shape the way we approach knowledge and learning, even today.
And even though some of his specific ideas might seem a little, I don't know, outdated now, the core of his message, it still resonates. To think for ourselves, to question everything, and to never stop exploring those mysteries of the universe and our place within it.
So as you go about your day, navigating this complex, this ever-evolving world, just remember the legacy of René Descartes. Embrace that power of reason, but, don't lose sight of that spark of wonder within you.
And who knows, maybe someday it'll be you, pushing the boundaries of knowledge, asking the big questions, leaving your own mark on the world. Until next time, stay curious, my friends.